Hello and welcome to the IPO Foundation's 20th anniversary and award celebration. My name is Derek Brown and I am the author of Spirits, Sugar, Water, Bitters, How the Cocktail Conquered the World, a great holiday gift, I might add. And I am the owner of the Columbia Room in Washington, D.C., which is an award-winning cocktail bar, and that's where I am right now. And I was also on the Stroke of Genius podcast, Can You Keep a Trade Secret? Which if you haven't heard already, you can go ahead and check out. It's on every major podcast platform. And today I get the pleasure of walking you through two great cocktails. Now, each one of these cocktails kind of has a different trade secret involved with it. Starting with the Mai Tai, which is a clash between two tiki giants for their tiki domination of the world. And the second drink is called the Steady Cocktail, which I created, which involves an ingredient from 1605, which is still a trade secret to this day. So I look forward to introducing you to those cocktails. I am grateful to Cantor Colburn for supporting this, and I'm sure you all are as well. So let's go ahead and start mixing. I love a good Mai Tai, but I have to admit that I rarely get a good Mai Tai, and I suspect that's the same with you. Usually when I go out and order a Mai Tai, which is rare because I actually know what's going to happen, but usually what happens is that there's some kind of red syrupy sweet or maybe a blue syrupy sweet drink that has nothing to do with the original recipes. And so I just stay away from it for the most part. But there is a really great drink called the Mai Tai, and it goes all the way back to the 1930s. And it is kind of rich, it's kind of boozy, and it's something that I think everyone should try. And so I hope that you're going to try it tonight. I hope you're going to mix along with me, and we're going to make you a Mai Tai. So I'm going to tell you the story about it, but I want to first start by making sure you have all the ingredients necessary to make it. So we're going to start by grabbing your shaker. Does everybody have a shaker? If you don't, just use 2 cups and pour it back and forth. That'll be fine. But if you have a shaker, this is called a Boston shaker. And with the Boston shaker, you'll need a Hawthorne strainer or something to strain it with. You'll also need, okay, so if you don't have the Boston shaker, you might have a cobbler shaker, which is 3 parts with a built-in strainer. And that's fine too, that'll work. And you'll need a jigger, which is the thingamajiggy. It's a measuring device. If you have that, great. There's all different kinds. You have the bell jigger or you have the little measuring cups or conical jiggers, or known as the Japanese jiggers. Whatever you have is fine. And if you need to, you can just count. So 1.5 ounces, we usually count to 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now look, it's not very accurate, but it's close. So do your best, all right? And we're going to need some ice. I'm going to use a tea strainer to make sure all the ice shards are out of it, like a fine strainer. We also call it a double strainer. You don't need to, but if you have one, grab it. And I'm going to get a rocks glass. That's the glass that a Mai Tai usually goes in. Again, you've probably seen the red version up in a Martini glass. Don't worry about that one. Put it aside. Let's forget about it. Let's pretend it never existed. All right. You're going to need rum, good rum, preferably, some Curacao, rinsed simple syrup, and I'll show you all these ingredients as I'm using them, lime, and some Orgeat Syrup, which is basically an almond syrup that you can order online, or you can make yourself. It's pretty elaborate, but we make our own. And that's all you need, really, to get started. So once you have that in front of you, let's go ahead and start making it. Now, if you don't have all the ingredients, just come back and watch this again, and you'll be able to make it at any time. Okay, so the drink itself is called the Mai Tai, which comes from the word or the phrase Mai Tai Roa E, which means out of this world. And I think it's true. The drink is out of this world, as I've said multiple times. So I guess I can stop praising it at this point. You get the point. So the first person to create it was Ernest Gant. known as Don the Beachcomber. He created it in 1933. And that drink kind of disappeared in the annals of history until about 4 or 5 years later. And it popped up again. There was another gentleman named Vic Bergeron, known as Trader Vic, who also created a Mai Tai in 1944. So it was after Don the Beachcomber's recipe. Don the Beachcomber is the person who created tiki. He created this faux Polynesian wonderland that I'm sure that you all know about, with the aloha shirts and the tiki mugs and elaborate garnishes and thatched roofs and all of that. That's going to become a beach staple, and occasionally you find one in a city that's absolutely excellent. In fact, my favorite tiki bar, I just want to give a shout out to it, is Latitude 29 in New Orleans. And when it's open again, please go there. It's awesome. Jeff Beachbum-Berry is the person who started it, and he is the one who's done most of the research on all of these old tiki drinks. And in fact, the Mai Tai recipe that I'm going to tell you about today was pretty much inspired by Jeff Beachbum-Berry. So these two gentlemen, Don the Beachcomber and Trader Vic, were kind of battling for the supremacy of the tiki world. They wanted to be the ones who had the best drinks and the best decor and all of those things. And obviously, Trader Vic took a page out of Don the Beachcomber's book, and I'm sure some of you could probably go back and prosecute that case. But that's not what I'm really going to talk about. They had two different recipes. In fact, they're not the same recipes, they're just the same name. And Trader Vic's recipe is the one that we're going to use today, because that's really the best one. Okay, so the first one, cool, we'll give him credit, but the Trader Vic one is the best one, and that's the one that we're going to use. But both of them were kind of battling it out. And what's funny is that they were afraid that some of their bartenders would steal their recipes and go to another bar, right? Or start their own bar, because these recipes were well-guarded secrets, recipes like the zombie or the Mai Tai. And so Don the Beachcomber especially decided that he was going to create this sort of secret mixes, right? So he had something called Don's Mix, for instance, that was at the time unknown what was in it. Or spice mix number 2, So what would happen is he'd put them in bottles and he'd mark them with their names, but the bartenders wouldn't know the ingredients. So they would learn how to mix it, but they would not know exactly what's in it. So that is a pretty extreme way to, protect your recipes. As we know, recipes are not copyrightable, but please correct me if I'm wrong. So essentially, they went this battle on, and tiki culture still is alive today, but we mostly remember Trader Vic, don't we? So if you've heard of the two of them, one of the two of them, chances are you've heard Trader Vic. So we'll give him the leg up. But they both went to the grave arguing that they were the creator of the Mai Tai. So we'll at least give them both credit. So to make this wonderful drink, let's go ahead and start with the cheater, or the bottom part of the shaker. And I'm going to use 2 rums, but you can use whatever rum that you want. In fact, Jeff Beachbum-Berry, whose recipe is great, he suggests using a Martinique Rum, which is a rum agricole, spelled R-H-U-M. It's French, and it's from Martinique, but the language is French. That's why it's spelled with an H. And it's awesome stuff. It smells really cool and grassy, and has notes of cocoa and baking spices, and it's just all over the place, honestly. This is good stuff. So go ahead, and if you can get this, get it. Again, it's a rum agricole, and this one is Niacin. I don't work for them. I just think it's a good rum. And I'm going to put 1 ounce of it into the shaker. I'm not adding any ice yet, so you shouldn't either. Essentially, I'm just pouring it into here. Now, if you have any other rum, or you're just using 1 rum, just pour 2 ounces instead. I'm going to pour a second rum. This is Jamaican rum, which is a much funkier, more intense, alcohol-wise rum. And I'm going to put that in there too. And that's going to make this recipe somewhat caustic. No, I mean, it's going to be boozy, really. Look at this. It's pot still rum at 100 proof. So it's intense. So maybe go easy on these. That's up to you, honestly. So I have 2 ounces of rum, and this drink is really a very strong drink. A lot of people, again, think of it in that syrupy sweet one. This one is closer to an old-fashioned or something like that in terms of the intensity of alcohol. So I have 2 ounces of rum. I split it between a Martinique rum and a Jamaican rum. You can use 2 ounces of whatever rums you want. I'm going to add a ½ ounce of a dry Curacao. Now, Curacao, you can get different Curacaos. Grand Marnier is also a Curacao. This one happens to be a little bit less sweet than the other one, so it works really great. I'm going to put that in there. It's an orange liqueur. Good stuff. This one is by Pierre Ferrand. And I am going to put a ½ ounce of Orgeat syrup in it. That is almond syrup. And we make our own in-house. And certainly you can try that if you would like. But you can order it online. And there's plenty of really great Orgeat syrups. If you have a nut allergy, skip this one and maybe just add simple syrup instead. The next thing I'm going to do is a ½ ounce of lime. So I'm actually going to fresh squeeze a lime. Or I'm going to squeeze a fresh lime. And to do that, I'm going to cut the top off of it because I'm going to put it in this, hand squeezer. Now, I'm trying to give you a little bit of secrets here and not angling it well. When you squeeze it, if you have that cut, then it stops the lime juice from shooting out the sides because it's just going out from one part of the lime. So I'm going to squeeze this into the jigger directly, and I'm going for a ½ ounce. And you know what? That's about half a lime, but it really depends on the time of year and the lime and where you get it from. But in this case, it was just a ½ lime. Now keep this spent shell because that's part of the decor for the drink itself. And I'm going to pour it into the shaker. Again, no ice in here. Once you add the ice, it starts diluting the drink. That means that there's like a clock ticking, and you have to start making it. The most amount of dilution, which is also what causes the chilling as well, is going to happen when you add the ice to the drink. So there's actually, if you look at it, on the surface of the ice, that's where the most water is. So once you add the ice in it, that's the most dilution that's going to happen. So it's kind of like, mixing up some kind of brownies or some kind of cake and put it in the oven. You can't really take it out and then crack an egg and remix it. So go ahead and build it in the shaker without the ice to start with. And I have, again, 2 ounces of rums. I've used a split rum, ½ ounce of Curacao, ½ ounce of Orgeat syrup, and a ½ ounce of lime. And then I'm going to use a ¼ ounce of a simple syrup. And mine is just brown because I use turbinado sugar. That's all. If you use white sugar, that's fine. And again, simple syrup, equal parts. You can be technical and measure it out gram for gram, or I think volume works pretty well. It's just about right. So we're going to use a ¼ ounce of simple syrup. Don't go a ½ ounce, that's too sweet. Now that we've got the mix here, I'm going to go ahead and add the ice. Don't be shy, a lot of ice works. I'm going to fill up the shaker, and then with the Boston shaker, of course, I'm going to form the seal. Now, I'm really lucky that formed a seal. Otherwise, that would have ruined everything. But I'm also going to give you a little quick tutorial on shaking, so don't shake just yet. A lot of people have funky shakes where they do it like this, or there's kind of like the bartender shake, But both of those are wrong in a way. I mean, they work really, but this one kind of just looks awkward, and you want to look confident while you're making a cocktail. I think that's a big part of the cocktail. Ultimately, you should look pretty. You should look good doing it, and that is going to equal a better looking drink. We drink first with our eyes. The other one is just going to throw out your shoulder. I had a rotator cuff injury at one point. Look, don't do it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put it in my hand like this, holding both cups, to holding this part that's open towards me. So if it spills, it doesn't spill on the camera, it spills on me. And correspondingly, when it doesn't spill on the guest, it spills on me. So I'm going to hold about chest height in a boxing stance. Yes, this is somewhat like, at this point, exercise. So you're going to use your core here, and you're going to shake, push, and pull with equal force. And we do that for about 15 seconds. And then with these Boston shakers, you've got to hit it, pop it open. I'll tell you a quick story. When I first started bartending, nobody told me how to do that. So I just kept slamming my hand into it. It's actually this specific place that you want to hit it, like right where it opens up here and the tins meet. You hit it and it pops open. I didn't know that. I just went home with a bruised hand. Obviously, because I was too proud to ask. Moral of that story, ask for help. All right, so now I'm going to take the strainer and I'm going to strain it into the glass. But I'm going to use a double strainer as well. So I'm pouring it into this glass directly, no ice in the glass yet, through the tea strainer or a double strainer. Oh, this looks good. Such a good drink. All right, yeah, I'm beating that dead horse. But you'll see. Once you have it, you'll know why I'm so excited about it. All right, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add fresh ice. Okay? So that's something that a lot of home bartenders wouldn't do. They might do something that we affectionately refer to as the dirty dump, where you just kind of dump all the ice in there that you've just shaken. And that's really not correct, because that's going to keep the drink it's going to be basically too diluted. The ice is already gone, it's a sacrifice. So you want to use fresh ice. I couldn't help myself. Then the spent shell, and you can certainly add umbrellas at this point if you want, or mint. Mint is a common one. Sometimes people will put an orchid on it. That's a pretty cool garnish. So I'm just going to put a spent shell right now because I already have it. This is an awesome drink, the Mai Tai. I hope you enjoy it. Please let me know how you like it. Hopefully that was an interesting story for you, and we're going to get into my cocktail, the steady cocktail. A lot of people ask me what my favorite cocktail is, and it's hands down my favorite cocktail is a dry martini. But I make it in a very specific way. In fact, I make it closer to the old recipe, which is from the beginning of the 20th century. And that is essentially doing equal parts, or 50-50. 1.5 ounces of gin, 1.5 ounces of dry vermouth, and a dash of orange bitters. Most people are not used to that, and they think dry means, swirling the vermouth around and dumping it out, or saluting France, or what have you. Like basically somehow degrading the vermouth. But vermouth is awesome, and if it's treated well, it is so delicious. I love a particular vermouth, which I keep in the fridge, because that's what you're supposed to do. Vermouth is wine. After a while, it gets ruined. It'll last longer because it's fortified than your average wine, but you need to take care of this. And so most people think, you just swirl it, dump it out, but actually dry meant back then dry gin versus sweet gin, and dry vermouth versus sweet vermouth. So dry martini is 50-50 with a dash of orange, and I take a lemon peel and just spray it on the top and discard the lemon peel. I don't like it sitting there, it gets too bitter. And I like it cold as hell, so I want it really, really icy. And so that's my favorite, and it's unequivocal. That's the one. I had an argument with a friend of mine who's a priest. His name is Father Bill Daly. He's a great guy. And he originally preferred a 3-to-1 martini, and I prefer the equal parts, and we would argue about it all day. Which one is the correct one? Obviously, he has a lot more gravitas behind him than I do. But ultimately, I found a compromise, and that was creating a drink called the steady cocktail, which it was based off of the original dry martini, 50-50, but it included an ingredient called Élixir Végétal de la Grande-Chartreuse. And I'll tell you, this ingredient is, not easy to find. It is easy to find in France, but it's not easy to find here. And it is made by Carthusian monks in France. And there is a story around it that is true. There's lots of stories about Catholic sort of liqueurs, I won't name which ones, that are just totally bogus. But this one is true. The original recipe is based off a 1605 recipe that they, this kind of elaborate manuscript that was hard to read. And a lot of people back then didn't know how to use herbs and use them in a medicinal way. This was originally conceived of as an elixir of life, as a medicinal product. Although I'm sure a lot of people used it non-medicinally, maybe even some of the monks. But they essentially had this manuscript. They couldn't really figure it out until in the middle of the 18th century, sort of later 18th century, they came up with a version of it, and that's what this is. So whether this is the original 1605 recipe, maybe not, but it's very close, and it certainly has some age on it if we're talking the middle of the 18th century. So it's 69% alcohol. It's pretty high. It smells awesome when you open it up. It smells like you are falling face first into a garden. You got all this herbal and bitter notes and some fruit notes as well, but it's all made of herbs. And we don't know what herbs. I mean, you can guess at it. You can smell it, and I think you'll figure it out, but at least some of them. But that recipe is kept under lock and key, and only 2 monks of the monks purportedly know what it is. So they don't share it with anybody. So it is definitely and unequivocally a secret. Later on, they created a version of the chartreuse that was more, kind of watered down, I guess. It had less alcohol. And that's the green chartreuse that we commonly use today. And then another version of that called yellow chartreuse. And we also have VEP chartreuse, which is like a kind of aged version of those. So there's lots of different kinds of chartreuse at this point, but the Élixir Végétal de la Grande-Chartreuse is the original one, and it's awesome. So I created essentially a 50-50 martini with a dash of Élixir Végétal de la Grande-Chartreuse, and it satisfied both me and Father Bill, and I'm sure it will be satisfying to you as well, especially if you're a martini fan. So we're going to start making it, and this one is made with a mixing glass. So we're not going to use a shaker, we're going to use a mixing glass, but you could use the bottom of the shaker, no problem. In fact, you could just use a tall glass if you wanted, but it should be weighted to keep it from falling over when you're stirring. And I'm going to start by grabbing the gin. I put it a little out of reach, so you have to give me a minute. I'm back. I love this gin. I'm not paid by this gin, Plymouth gin, but it's very versatile. Another one that's great is Ford's gin. Both of these are great. Look at kind of like all-around cocktail gins. They taste delicious, and they work excellent in a range of cocktails. And I especially like this one in a martini. So I'm going to do 1.5 ounces. I am not going to add the ice yet. As I said before, build it in the mixing glass, then add ice. We're going to put that down. And as I promised, I'm going to do equal parts vermouth. Pouring it in there. And lastly, with a classic dry martini, you would do a dash of orange bitters, but I'm going to do a dash of Élixir Végétal de la Grande-Chartreuse. God, I love this stuff. All right, we're just going to put a little bit. A little bit goes a long way, so don't feel like you have to add half of the bottle. Just basically a dash. A dash is 6 drops. I probably went a little over there, and I'm not worried about it. But a dash is 6 drops if you want to be technical about it. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add ice. I'm going to tell you what the difference between stirring and shaking is, because I think that is something that most people are confused about. Why would you shake, stir? There's James Bond and all of his nonsense about shaking a martini. He was just being iconoclastic. I wouldn't take advice from James Bond on how to make a drink, and you shouldn't take advice from me on how to conduct espionage, right? So I think ultimately our martini is better stirred. And the reason for it is, stirring is more of a art form in a way, right? Like with shaking, you shake it for about 15 seconds, right? And it's this violent action and it's done. But with stirring, you have to kind of, feel around and, get this kind of gentle motion. And you're going to do 30 to 50 strokes, depending on the ice. With the larger ice that I have, which is 1 1/4 inch cubes, I do about 50 strokes. But with the ice that you might have in the fridge, you might just do 30. And when I stir, I'm going to use the back of the spoon around the glass walls. And I'm not, usually when I put it down, I'm not actually moving my fingers, I'm just flicking my wrist a little bit. I have to do it a little differently because I'm holding up for you all, but you'll have to trust me. There we go, more of a flick of a wrist. I do that 50 times. Now, shaking is when you have to combine all of these ingredients that have wildly different densities, right? So if it's like eggs or cream or juice and spirits, then it's better to shake it. With something like this that's all spirits, you can stir it, and you can use this art form that Kazuo Ueda, which is a bartender I was very influenced by, who owns Tender Bar in Japan. He's one of Japan's top bartenders, known as Ueda-san as well. He explains stirring as weaving together silk. Maybe I'm being too, poetic here, but I believe it. In fact, I learned to stir by stirring with rice in a mixing glass to get it right, to make sure it looks good while I do it. Again, we drink first with our eyes, so that's an important step. All right, so have I done it 30 times, 50 times? I'm getting close. You can just, at this point, taste it, and if it's too strong, keep stirring. In fact, it was a little too strong, so I'm going to do it just a little bit more, but it's getting there, so just a little bit more is perfect. Got it. All right, now I used a Hawthorne strainer with the shaker because this keeps all of the ice shards out, right? But with this one, we don't have ice shards, so I'm going to use a different strainer. I'm going to use a julep strainer. Either one will work for you ultimately, but I have all the fancy devices, so I want to go ahead and use them. And it can be expensive bartending as a hobby, but it's also fun. So I apologize for those of you that I'm getting interested in this expensive hobby. All right, we are going to pour it into the glass. And here's the deal. I do not put any garnish at this point. And here's the reason why. It's because essentially, when you smell it, it has this wonderful herbal aroma that comes from the Élixir. And I don't want to kill that with citrus, and it will kill it. That's perfect. That's delicious. Look, it's going to be a little boozier for those of you who prefer the sour drinks or drinks with juices in it. And that, we all live in our own perceptual world. But I'd say, each one of us has just a different set of tastes. But I would say, go ahead and try it. This drink is boozy, but it is surprisingly mellow. And it has that wonderful herbal flavor. The vermouth, the gin, and the Élixir all conspire to create this incredibly complex and interesting drink. And it really is such a close version to the dry martini, but that Élixir puts it over the edge. So I created it. I hope you enjoy it. I called it the steady cocktail after the motto of the Carthusian monks, which is the cross stays steady as the world turns. So I thought that was kind of fun. Again, it's got the approval of my priest and myself, and I hope you enjoy it. I just want to add one thing. I would love to talk to you more at the networking event. If anyone has any questions, I will be there. Grab your cocktail and join the networking event right after, immediately following this session. And so thank you again. We'll see you there.